Hi, it's Bill Black with your final video of the 2026 legislative session. As you may recall, the session began back on February 17th. Expectations were low as to what would be accomplished, especially given the turbulent 2025 session. The DFL still held only a one-seat majority in the Senate, and the House remained tied 67 to 67. In addition, November was already on everyone's mind, since all 201 legislative seats and the governor's seats are on the ballot later this year. The session did get off to a fairly slow start, although you wouldn't know that just by looking at the number of bill introductions. By the end of the 2026 session, the House had seen 1,815 bills introduced, while the Senate dealt with 1,764 new bills. These were added to the measures introduced but not passed during the 2025 session. That stack of proposed legislation was carried over, and the bills were also alive this year. So in total, some 10,472 bills were introduced for the biennium. The first day of session saw both chambers and both parties come together to welcome back Senator John Hoffman, who survived an assassination attempt last summer. Legislators also paid tribute to House Speaker Emeritus Melissa Hortman, who did not survive the tragic events of June 14, 2025. Until the final week of the session, little else brought the sides together. The Republicans focused most of their efforts on issues related to fraud. Meanwhile, the Democrats spent their energies on attempting to pass gun safety legislation while also protecting and expanding programs they were able to adopt during the 2023-2024 biennium when they had control of the House, Senate, and Governor's office. As the May 18 mandatory adjournment date approached, legislative leaders, the governor, his staff, and commissioners intensified their confidential negotiations to pass what they could. They ultimately reached an agreement on the general parameters of a plan to end the session peacefully. However, disagreements over the details threatened to bring the session down with no major legislation passing. In the end, the details were worked out on several issues. Among them were a tax bill and a pair of capital investment bills, one of which was a traditional bonding bill, and the other a bill that pays for projects with state cash instead of bond proceeds. Noticeably absent from the list of agreed-upon bills is an omnibus energy bill. But that may be a good thing, considering what was on the table for possible inclusion in such a bill. As you'll see in a minute, though, some important actions that would normally have been in an energy bill found their way into other bills. When all is said and done, MMUA is happy with the passage of some of the legislation adopted during the 2026 legislative session and disappointed that other issues failed to make it to the finish line. So let's take a closer look at what did and did not pass. As a reminder, when the governor signs a bill, the state revisor assigns it a chapter number in the book of that session's laws. So from here on, I'll be referring to the newly assigned chapter numbers for 2026 and not the bill designations you may have been following during the session. Chapter 44 renames Xcel's state-mandated solar garden program after Melissa Hortman, who championed its creation, a fitting tribute. Skeptics, however, see the naming as a way of making it more emotionally difficult to repeal the program, as some have advocated to do in recent years. The change became effective April 14, 2026. Chapter 47 eliminates the need to seek a new certificate of need when rebuilding or upgrading an existing transmission line up to 115 kilovolts, so long as it uses at least 80% of the existing right-of-way. Effective date April 22, 2026. Chapter 79 requires wastewater treatment facility operators to promptly notify tribal governments in addition to the public and downstream drinking water facilities after untreated wastewater release. The law is effective May 5, 2026. Chapter 90, also known as the Payment Transparency Act, gives contractors and subcontractors on public improvement projects a new right to obtain payment information from the public owner. Contractors can request the amount and date of any progress payment, retainage payment, final payment, or any other type of payment made by the contracting public agency, including public subdivisions. All requests must be answered within 7 calendar days. The law is effective August 1, 2026. Chapter 112 requires underground utility operators to provide a locate status notice using Gopher State One Call's electronic positive response system prior to the end of a locate period. Operators must also update contact information with Gopher State within 3 months of any change. The new law is effective for locates on or after August 1st this year. Updated contact information is not due until January 1, 2027. Chapter 128 is the Omnibus Tax Bill. I'll go through the parts you should know about. Article 4, Section 6 establishes a uniform process to increase or decrease the size of a local public utilities commission. This is a measure MMUA worked on after last year's law didn't go far enough. Article 8, Section 11 appropriates $500,000 for the Great Plains Institute to conduct a study on nuclear energy's potential in Minnesota. The study was a compromise in the effort to repeal the nuclear moratorium, an issue MMUA has supported for several sessions. Issues to be addressed in the study include technical advances, life cycle costs, and waste storage. The study must be completed by January 30, 2027, just after the start of the next legislative session. Chapter 129 is the Omnibus Capital Investment Bill that pays for projects and programs through cash appropriations. Of note for us, Article 1, Section 9 appropriates $1.8 million to the Department of Health for drinking water planning grants. The details are spelled out in Article 2, Section 3. Chapter 130 is the Omnibus Capital Investment Bill that funds projects and programs through revenue from state-issued bonds. Under Article 1, the following provisions stand out for municipal utilities. Section 8, Subdivision 2 appropriates $1.5 million to the Pollution Control Agency, or PCA, for the statewide Drinking Water Contamination Mitigation Grant Program. Section 8, Subdivision 3 provides $10.5 million to the PCA for the Solid Waste Capital Assistance Grant Program. Section 24, Subdivision 2 gives $19 million to the Public Facilities Authority, or PFA, to provide matching funds for federal capitalization grants and to fund the Drinking Water Revolving Fund. Section 24, Subdivision 3 provides $56 million to the PFA for the Water Infrastructure Funding Program. Of the total, $26 million is earmarked for wastewater projects listed on the PCA's priority list, and $30 million is for drinking water projects on the Department of Health's priority list. Section 24, Subdivision 4 provides $30 million to the PFA for the Point Source Implementation Grants Program. Section 24, Subdivision 5 gives $15 million to the PFA for grants under the Lead Service Line Replacement Program. Section 24, Subdivision 6 provides $17 million to the PFA for grants under the Emerging Contaminants Grant Program. And Article 2, Section 4 clarifies that while cash grant money can be used for any lead line replacement costs, general obligation bond money can only be used to replace publicly owned portions of them. The effective date for these provisions was May 28, 2026. While MMUA is grateful for what passed, we're equally thankful that certain proposed legislative measures didn't pass. Some of these include utility fee limitations, authorization of non-utility electricity sales, and an exemption from utilities' interconnection processes for plug-in solar panels. On the other hand, we are disappointed that net metering reform was only given an informal committee conversation this year. Worse still, the lead pipe replacement program received only $15 million, while the need is at least $100 million. This video wraps up the 2026 legislative session, but Kent and I are not resting at the lake, at least not most of the time. We are already thinking about the 2027 session, which will convene at noon on Tuesday, January 12. What changes to law would most help your utility? Feel free to call or email Kent or me with your thoughts. It is also neither too early nor too late to contribute to the Municipal Utilities Action Fund. Your donation helps Kent and me gain access to important events where we can talk with legislators in a lower pressure setting away from the Capitol. These events are crucial so that lawmakers remember to think about municipal utility needs as they start planning next year's bills. There's a QR code at the end of this video to make a donation. You can also donate at mmua.org or mail us a check. We thank you for anything you can do to help us advocate for your hometown utility. Well, that's a wrap for this video. Thanks for watching, and remember, what happens in St. Paul affects us all.